Hello, I just finishing today editing today's podcast episode, and I think it's one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. I wish I had like 2 hours to interview Dr. Melissa McCreery. We talked about emotional eating, and just so you know, Dr. Melissa McCreery is a psychologist, emotional eating expert, author, host of the Too Much on Her Plate podcast, and creator of Your Missing Piece, the program that supports smart, busy women in creating freedom from overeating and peace with food. She has helped thousands break cycles of overwhelm, overload, and overeating without feeling deprived and without depending on ridiculous amounts of willpower. Participants in her signature program lose their cravings and their overeating habits. Dr. McCreary's approach to helping working mothers, busy professionals, and stressed out business owners emphasizes leveraging your unique strengths, ditching diet mentality, and using the power of psychology. Her perspective has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, CNN Health, Weight Watchers Magazine, Good Housekeeping, Working Mother, Fitness, Women's Health, Real Simple, and Self. I think this episode is really important because it might be the missing piece as to why you're not losing weight. I personally think there are typically 3 issues people have with their weight loss, or like 3 different spheres. I think often a nutritional problem, which may look like you not eating enough protein, you not being in a calorie deficit, stuff like that. I think there's normally an exercise issue as well. Maybe you're not doing it all the way that you're supposed to be doing it, or you're not doing it consistently, or you're not really strength training in the way that you should be doing it. And then I also think that there's typically a psychological problem, which we talk about today. This could look like why you're always craving a sweet after dinner, or you do so well on the week and in the weekends you blow it, or every time you go to town, you like feel like you end up just eating so many high calorie sweets. And you're like, why did I even do that? We get to a lot of the answers of why you feel like might feel so out of control, or you just feel like you can't stick with your nutritional stuff. And it might just be an emotional issue. And we talk today about what that is, what that looks like, specifically for really busy women, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, working woman without being a mom, and then also some really specific tips on what you can do to work on that. As far as as far as announcements from me and my company, just for Millennial Living, again, our theme, if I haven't already said, is about making a plan. So I want you to think of like your plan as far as exercise, nutrition, making a menu for the week. This can be really helpful to be consistent with things. And so for the challenge this month, just post 3 times of whatever you're doing for that, and that can help to enter you to winning a $25 gift card. If you're not a challenge person, totally get it. We also have so many other supplemental materials, and I have been uploading recipes, especially the recipes that I've been posting on Instagram. I've been doing a lot more because now I have more time since I'm seeing less clients, posting the recipes with all the amounts and stuff that I've been leaving out on Instagram onto Millennial Living. And then I uploaded a piece of content in the form of a Tex-Mex guide, my low calorie guide to eating Tex-Mex out. So if you feel like you love doing that, you should go check it out as far as like low calorie drink options, low calorie menu options that you can like save and keep with you. Just a reminder that I'm only taking clients for 5 more days, and then you will no longer be able to work with me until the indefinite future, because I don't know when I'm coming back or what work will look like after I have my baby in August. I'll definitely be around. I just won't be taking one-on-one clients for a while because I just want to enjoy this phase of life that I'm in. But without further ado, I hope you enjoy today's podcast episode with Dr. Melissa McCreery.
Hello, and welcome to the Millennial Nutritionist podcast. I'm Isla Garcia, master's degree of nutrition science and registered dietitian, and I'm going to make weight loss realistic, sustainable, and uncomplicated for your busy lifestyle. On this podcast, me and my team of registered dietitians will decipher the latest nutrition research, dissect fad diets, and discuss social media trends for you so you can feel confident knowing what to eat to achieve your health goals. Research suggests that most weight loss programs aren't successful, but my experience has taught me that this is not because the participants aren't committed. It's because those diets are designed by non-nutrition professionals and center around severe restrictions. We are here to provide the facts about the science of weight loss so you can have the success you want and continue living your best life.
All
right, Dr. Melissa McCreery, let's go ahead and get started with an intro definition of how would you overall define emotional eating so we can kind of move on from this point.
It's a good place to start. So I think of emotional eating as any time that we are using food that's not for fuel, right? So your body doesn't need fuel and you're not hungry, but you're using food to take care of a feeling or to try to not have a feeling or to change a feeling. Um, and we all do it. It's not, there's emotional eating is not a bad thing. It's something that we all do, and we've been trained to do from the time that we were born. We're trained to use food for all sorts of things. It becomes a problem when it's a problem for us. It becomes a problem when we don't like what we're doing, or when you are reaching for food because you don't know what else to do. And it's become a pattern that you don't know how to break, or that is getting in the way of where you want to be with your eating and with food.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was going to ask, is it always bad, or when is it need to be like reflected on to change? And it sounds like you kind of answer that, or anything else with that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of diet talk out there that you should recognize when you're eating when you're not hungry, and just not do it. Well, first of all, I think that's some of the most unhelpful advice. Right. If we knew how to do that, we wouldn't be caught in cycles with food. But also, we've learned in our culture to use food for lots of things. Food is enjoyable. Food is fun. Food has a lot of emotion tied to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That kind of goes into my first question, which was, why do we emotionally eat, do you think, or is there an actual like reason that we do?
Well, I think that there are reasons that get women into cycles that don't work for them with food. I have a concept that I use called hidden hungers, and that is things that we're really hungry for, things that we're really craving that are not food, but that it becomes really easy to use food to replace, or to try to cope with, or to try to transform. And so there are these common hidden hungers that show up in probably all our lives. Like, well, I'll tell you the things that can lead to hidden hungers: things like stress, things like being too busy, exhaustion, not getting enough time for yourself, being too hard on yourself, emotions, having tough emotions on top of all of that. See, we think of emotional eating as just, oh, maybe if I know how to deal with the emotions, I'll be better, or I won't have this issue anymore. But when you have all this other stuff that goes on in most of our lives happening, emotions become really difficult to deal with, or the last thing that you want to deal with. And it is so easy to use food to try to keep going, or to try to not feel the thing that you're feeling, or to try to have just a little bit more energy so you can finish your project and wind up your day and get to bed. Um, Food is just really easy.
So it kind of sounds like you're saying that it's just we emotionally eat because we are trying to mask something else, or like not identifying with an actual problem that we should fix, or is that what you're saying?
We emotionally eat to try to I think the short answer is that we emotionally eat as a way of coping, and because we're trying to make life easier. We're just trying to get through.
Yeah.
And the problem is that we live in a world where there's all this nutrition information, there's all this weight loss information, there are all these food plans, right? We've been taught that if you don't like your eating, if you feel like you're eating too much, or if you want to change your weight, then the answer is in the food. You need to eat less, you need to move more, or you need to track this, or you need to cut this food group out, or all these kinds of things that relate to food. But what gets ignored is the things that are driving us to want to overeat, the things that are driving the cravings, the reason that you get home from work and you feel like this out of control person with food. and so if we don't address the reasons, and many times it's these hidden hungers, the need for rest, the need for stress relief. If we don't start to address these things, then you're constantly in this battle of trying to control your urges, or trying to control your appetites, or wondering why food is always getting the best of you. And that can become a real vicious cycle for people.
Yes. Amen to that. Because I would say, as
Yeah.
a dietitian, like it is hard. It's hard to like when I notice like a problem with somebody's nutrition, I feel like more than not, I mean, there is a lack of just education on like what we think healthy is, but I feel like we're a pretty educated population now. There's a lot of it I see come from people who are just like way too stressed, or like they're,
Mhm.
and they're not really treating the root of the problem. And sometimes I'll say like, hey, it is beyond my scope, but I'm like noticing that I don't know if this is even a nutrition problem for you. I think it's more of like some of the things, even like psychologically going on. And if you were to work on that, I think you would lose weight. So can you kind of talk about the different approach, maybe what you would do versus like a dietitian would do, just so that people know that, like you said, nutrition isn't always the reason that you're overeating.
Yeah, I think nutrition is really, this sounds like the most inane statement ever. Nutrition is very valuable. Nutrition is important. And I always start with, and I guess I can just say, if there's something that you want to write down from this episode, I think the key point is there is always a reason that we eat. There's
Mhm.
always a reason. And if it's not a need for fuel, it is something else. There's a reason that we're doing this. And so often what happens for people is that they get caught in a loop where they're doing a kind of eating that they don't like. They're binging at night, or they're just eating sugar all day long, or they can't break their drive-through habit or whatever. And they're mad at themselves. And so they get in this loop of being mad at themselves and pushing harder to change their eating. And they know, so most of my clients know exactly, they could write a book on what it is they should eat. They can't make themselves do it, right? And so I start with the reason. We've got to understand the reason that you're eating. And there's so much value in that, because it's like you were talking about. If you can take care of the reason, the power that the cravings have, the power of the hunger, the power of the chocolate, it gets deflated. It goes away. I see this over and over again in participants in my program, where they're so busy taking care over here of the reasons, and they're thinking, well, when are we going to get to the food, and when are we going to talk about a food plan? And then they look up and they realize, I'm not binging anymore because I'm taking care of the reasons. I'm not exhausted. I've got better plans for my stress, right? I'm being kinder to myself. And not only is that really cool because you're not having to be strong to control your food anymore, but it's also really cool because when you address the reasons, you address the reasons. So your life gets better. If what you have is a hidden hunger for stress relief, or you're not getting enough me time, and you start giving yourself that, not only can you clear up a lot of problems that happen with food and overeating, but you like your life better.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that, because especially from a nutrition standpoint, I always have clients come to me, and sometimes they're just like, if I need the lowest calorie snack, what's the lowest calorie snack? What is the lowest calorie chocolate I can eat? And I'm like, I don't think this is your problem. Like, me telling you these things, I feel like it's going to make it worse. And I feel like you're kind of getting under that layer of like, yeah, this is why like that wouldn't actually probably solve to always have the lowest calorie item you can find there.
Well, and I think that there's this concept of emotional eating. But really, when we're talking about emotional eating, so much of the time we're talking about the psychology of
Mm.
eating. We're talking about the psychology of why we eat, and the different things that we're trying to use food for in our lives, from a psychological standpoint. And what you're talking about isn't emotional eating, but I think it's really important because there's all these ways that our brains and our way of trying to make changes get in the way and make eating worse. Like, give me the lowest calorie snack, right? Like, I have to jump in and do something really big and really dramatic that I know I can't sustain, but I kind of hope I can. Or that I know I can't sustain, but there's this other part of my brain that is wired to, what's the quickest result I can get, right? What's the biggest bang for my buck that I can create? And so I know you see this in your practice because we all see it, just women who are on this roller or hamster wheel. It's a roller coaster, but it's one that just goes nowhere, right? Doing the same thing over and over again. And every time they do, they feel more defeated and more hopeless. And their weight struggles get worse.
Mhm. Yes, definitely.
Do you love our realistic approach on nutrition but want to dive a little bit deeper? Let me tell you about the Millennial Living Membership Program. This was designed to help you stay motivated and inspired no matter what health journey you're on.
We develop monthly nutrition and fitness challenges with prizes you can win if you stick with it to help motivate you through every month. To inspire you, we upload weekly recipes with downloadable food lists, monthly food demos, and we can even have a registered dietitian answer your questions on nutrition and weight loss. Our members form a community with other like-minded people to help support each other on their health journey. If you are seeking a way to stay motivated throughout your health journey with our method in mind, try signing up for the Millennial Living Membership Program for the first 2 weeks free by signing up on our website at themillennialnutritionist.com. Yeah, kind of going into those specific struggles, I actually was inspired by one of your podcast episodes for this question and talking about specific women's situations. So what do busy women specifically deal with when it comes to emotional eating for like what you see or even just like what you think in general?
What do they deal with in terms of specific challenges?
Or like, yeah, what is their emotional eating? Just because, like you said in the beginning, I feel like a lot of people are like, yeah, but I don't emotionally eat because I'm not like out here, depressed and then eating. And I
Exactly.
always trying to tell people, yeah, but that's not really always emotional eating is. So what would you, even like if we thought about a stay-at-home mom, like what would be examples of what that would look like for a day of emotional eating, do you think?
You know what it looks like for so many women, whether they are a stay-at-home mom or a professional or somebody who's working from home, what it looks like for so many women is waking up in the morning or waking up on Monday and deciding, okay, this is the day I'm going to do it, right? I've got a plan. I'm going to be good. I've made my little schedule. I'm completely organized. Getting through the day. Maybe you are so busy you don't even get to lunch, or you eat it really quickly before you get to your next Zoom meeting, or just going from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. Getting home, and it's either when you get home from work or maybe you make it through dinner, but then it all falls apart.
Mm,
Right. And so it's either maybe you get home and you can't stop grazing while you're making dinner, or maybe you make it through dinner and then you get everything done and you just feel empty, or you feel depleted, or you feel like there hasn't been anything for me all day long. And you know what? I deserve it. I deserve the ice cream, or I deserve to just go get that bag of chips, or I'm going to stay up later than everybody else because now they're gone and I get some time for myself and I haven't had any all day long. And I'm going to get the chocolate and I'm going to get the Netflix. And then you wake up the next morning mad at yourself, frustrated. Why can't I break the cycle? That's the cycle that I see over and over and over again. And everybody has their own variation of it, but smart women who do amazing things, who are operating at 120% all day long, and then are feeling incredibly frustrated about why can't I do this food thing differently? Why am I overeating every single day? Why am I blowing it? And
mm.
who are just really sick of starting over.
So it sounds like you're saying almost like using food as a reward at the end of the day or like a release or like they want some happiness. Is that what you're saying?
I think it is using food as a reward. It's
Mhm.
using food for comfort.
Mm,
It is, but it's a cumulative thing. What happens for so many busy women is that it becomes really easy to go through the day or even the whole week on autopilot, in reaction mode, and
mhm,
not actually taking a breath, and literally not checking in with yourself all day long, not asking, what am I feeling? What is going on inside of me? Am I hungry? What do I need? It is so easy to get on a track where all day long you're just saying, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? What's the next thing? What do I have to get done? and and not even stopping to so that there's so many people out there talking about self-care
mhm,
and how to take better care of yourself, how to be kind to yourself, or intuitive eating, right? We talk about eating what you're hungry for and eating when you're hungry. There's mindfulness. All these concepts sound really good, but we cannot do any of them if we're not tuned into ourselves.
mhm, mhm,
Emotional eating is a huge sign that you're probably not tuned into yourself for periods of the day, or maybe the whole day, or maybe for the last month. And we live in a world that encourages us to do that.
And you mean to
right?
to ourselves as far as like what we actually need, like we actually need a rest or we need to take a day off or
Yeah.
something like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Just, well, tuning in just enough to say, hey, what am I feeling right now?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think I do this exercise with a lot of people, and first of all, a lot of people don't even know what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or oh man, I hadn't even realized, my shoulders are up around my ears. And it's how women get so hungry. They skip lunch because there isn't time. And then all of a sudden which is another reason the binging happens at the end of the day, right? Because of your blood sugar, and you're completely depleted. But all of these things, knowing basic things, how do I feed myself? How do I pay attention to myself? How do I realize that my stress is building, and really it would be great to just go walk around the building before my next Zoom call. All of those things require just taking a beat and asking, okay, how am I doing right now? And we don't do that.
Right. Yeah. What what do you feel like makes emotional eating worse, if anything, that like maybe we shouldn't do or stay away from?
All those things that trigger hidden hungers, stress, well, and it's unavoidable.
I was gonna say don't
Stress,
stress.
right? Stress is unavoidable. You are going to have times when you are exhausted. You are going to have times where you don't get enough time for yourself, or when you're too busy, um, and the antidote to all of that isn't finding a way to lead a perfect life,
Mm,
which what is perfect, right? Where you don't have any of those things. But the antidote is knowing that that is going on, so that
mm,
you can start to respond to it. So on my website, I actually have a hidden hungers quiz, because the other thing that happens is I talk about these things and people say, I have all of them. I have all the hidden hungers. What am I supposed to do? I can't quit my life.
right.
And so I designed a quiz so that you can figure out what your primary hidden hunger is, which means what's the primary thing that is driving you to overeat. And then you can get some really simple, doable action steps that you can take to start to address that. Because when you address one, you start to address all of them. So
Mm,
that's the first thing, knowing that there are these things that lead us to eat. The number one thing that we can all do is start just tuning in. And by tuning in, which was a great question, by the way, what the heck does that even mean? It can be literally pausing, taking one breath, and just saying, okay, what am I feeling right now? Oh, I'm starting to get a headache. Oh, it doesn't have to be a big emotion word. Maybe I'm just starting to get a headache, or I'm really irritated about
mm,
that conversation I just had. Or, oh, you know what? I am actually hungry,
mm,
or my stomach hurts, or I feel sad, but just we can't take care of ourselves if we don't know what's going on inside of us. And that sounds so basic, but most of us don't know most of the time what's going on inside of ourselves. If you have a free moment, what do? You pick up your phone and you start scrolling. You don't think, what's going on with me?
mm.
we're not we're not being trained to do that.
So it kind of leads into what I want to ask next, which is so then how can you work on overeating from emotional eating? Like, I know that's probably like the whole everything that you do. It's like when people are just like, how do you lose weight? I'm like, but maybe just like a couple of your biggest tips on what you could do to help yourself.
Mhm. Absolutely. The first one is, so I'm a psychologist, so I'm
Mhm.
always going to go back to what you are thinking and what you're believing and what you are telling yourself, because guess what? That influences everything. If you are telling yourself this is impossible, or let's say you think, okay, I know I'm a stress eater. I absolutely eat when I'm stressed. My life is really stressful and there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm screwed, right? That is going to influence your ability to be successful. So I'm always going to come back to your thoughts and your beliefs and your feelings. The first thing is to take on board, or if you don't believe it, experiment with the idea that it is possible, that there's always a reason that you're eating. If you wander into the kitchen in the middle of the day and you're not hungry, there is a reason. You might not know what it is. There's a reason. So start with that. Start being curious about, okay, why am I here? Or why was this afternoon so challenging for me when yesterday I didn't even think about food? What was different? What was different before? What was I feeling? What was going on? Start looking for the reasons and being curious about what they are, because then even if you think right now that they are impossible to deal with, you can start to think about, what could I do about the reasons? And here's the other thing. If you can't do anything about the reason you are eating, so back to the stress example, you've got an incredibly stressful day. You know you're a stress eater. You are not in control of the stress. There's nothing you can do about it. You can always be kind and compassionate with yourself. And kindness and compassion go a huge way in shifting eating. So it's the difference between the dialogue that is probably in your brain right now, if you have a bad day with food, which is something along the lines of, I can't believe I blew it again. You're so stupid. You're so lazy. You knew what to do. You didn't do it. Here I am back at square one. And we have this horrible soundtrack. The difference between what happens when you play that soundtrack, which is for so many women, you just go back into the kitchen and eat some more because you feel miserable and it's all ruined. Or you know what? This was a really hard day. I have so much stress and there's nothing I can do about it. And I feel really powerless. And I just need to be kind to myself because this just sucks. Compassion is not fixing what's going on, but it can change things. And we don't take that on board. And I think that's a really powerful piece to addressing overeating. Take a look at how hard we're being on ourselves and see if you can come at it from a different vantage point.
When I hear you saying that, I just hear all the people that I sometimes work with that are just super into numbers, which I guess makes sense because like I'm a dietitian, so that's what I do. But can you kind of speak to any more details of like why some of that would help people? I feel like I know the answer, but I just want you to say, why would that help somebody lead them to weight loss? Because I think some people would hear that, or if I even said that, they'd be like, yeah, but really the answer is I just need to be in a more calorie deficit. That's why I'm not losing weight. Can you kind of speak to why what you're saying would still help somebody lose weight?
Yeah, I would say, how is that working for you? I think that one of the things our brain does is, first of all, brains don't like to change. And so when you ask your brain to think about something from a different perspective, it is going to give you all the reasons that you don't want to do that. But yeah, we have all lived in a world where we have been conditioned over and over and over again that the answer to changing your eating, especially overeating and emotional eating, is to work harder, to take a plan and apply it to yourself. And if it doesn't work, blame yourself and tell yourself that you just need to work harder or be stricter or make it more rigid. All that is you being put on a hamster wheel where the belief is if you run harder, you will eventually get somewhere. And it is a huge lie that there are industries making billions of dollars perpetuating. Just try it one more time. Just go back in there. And if you fail, it isn't the plan's fault, it's your fault. I will tell you that not only is that a hamster wheel, it is a perfect recipe for emotional eating and overeating. Let us tell you that the only solution to your problem is that you need to work impossibly hard. You need to get it perfect. You need to never blow it. And when you do, you need to blame yourself and you need to feel guilty and maybe a little ashamed because you haven't been able to handle it. That right there will lead most people into the kitchen to get a big bowl of ice cream or to dive into the jar of cashews or something, because it's the recipe for feeling powerless and out of control, and it is not helpful.
Oh, there's so many other questions, but I'm going to move on to the next one, and we can always do another episode. What can you give your tips for some of these specific situations? I was trying to think of some of the biggest ones that I see with my millennial clients, and kind of working first. One from an audience question. She said, I work from home. This is why she thought she was struggling with emotional eating. I work from home. I go looking for food after work stress, work wins, and to procrastinate. So it just looks like what you were saying, like she's just using food for all the emotions. Like how would she, what would like be your tips for a situation like that? Or is it just what you already said?
So I think what I said to you is we could do more than an episode. I mean, I have a 6-month program where we
Yeah.
untangle that stuff and fix that stuff. Because first of all, it's incredibly common.
Mm,
It's incredibly common. And figuring out the lowest calorie snack or how to make a calorie deficit or how to game it is not going to help. It
mhm,
really is about the reasons. Why, what is this pattern about? What are the other deficits that are happening all day long that are, because that's what happens. We get to the end of the day and we've depleted everything. And diet mentality says that's when you call in the willpower,
mhm,
right? The end of the, there isn't any left. You've left it out on the field of your life. So the whole plan is incredibly flawed. But if you can start to be curious about what are the hidden hungers that are accumulating. And here's the other thing. The end of the day is the hardest time for so many people. And it is also the hardest time to be really proactive because you're completely depleted. And
mhm,
so one of the things I would really think about and what I work with clients on is how can you see the pattern building if
mhm.
you are getting to the point that you are what was her she was exhausted at the end of the day, or can you read it
She
again?
goes looking for food after work stress, work wins, and to procrastinate.
Hmm. Okay, we'll do this. The wins are a little bit different, but the stress and and procrastinating, if you can start to be curious about how that builds during the day. Or maybe that stuff is building, but also maybe you're procrastinating because your energy is depleting during the day. Think about where earlier in the day you might be able to intervene. If your stress is building and building and building, is there a break that you could take earlier in the day, right? Or most of us have an energy dip at the end of the day, but are there things that you're doing, maybe like not taking a break or skipping lunch, or maybe it's what you eat for lunch, or what is happening so that your energy is depleted? Because what you've got is the perfect storm at the end of the day where you have stress and you have no energy and maybe you have an obligation to go cook dinner for your family or something. It's a recipe for overeating. So how can you start reformulating that during a time when you feel more in control and empowered in your day?
Mm, okay. And then the work wins part, or this even relates to something, I don't know if it does relate. In my head, it relates to, I see a lot of people who are really successful professionally, and then they overeat, maybe even like having more access to money now or able to eat out more and socialize more. Can you kind of speak to maybe that situation? Like, is that even emotional eating? Where would somebody start if that's their problem?
It is emotional eating. It comes down to a number of different things. I think you really have to explore it individually. One is, are you getting other rewards? Because it is really easy to use food as your only reward if you don't feel entitled to take the time and space to do the
Mm-hmm.
other stuff, right? I'm too busy, so I'll do this. Or so are you giving yourself the time and the space to reward yourself in other ways? But I think it's also back to psychology. We spend a lot of time inside my Missing Piece program talking about what are the thoughts and the beliefs that you have about food that are keeping you stuck. We tell ourselves a lot of stories, like it feels really great to eat the entire pint of ice cream, that are not entirely true, or they're not entirely the whole story. But if you repeat a story often enough, you start to believe it's a fact. And so we spend a lot of time looking at, what am I telling myself? Do I really enjoy eating all the things? When does the enjoyment end? What really is pleasure? What really is a treat? And what is something I've just been telling myself I deserve, so I feel kind of graspy about it, but I'm not even really enjoying it or tasting it or savoring it. So there are a lot of different things we could play with there. We could talk for a really long time about that.
Yeah. What about, and again, what about this situation I see also too? More of like, I guess, a scarcity mindset when people are maybe like on vacation, or this even comes up in the holidays, or like this one food is only like time of the year when my grandma makes it, or when you're on vacation, they're on vacation and they're like, well, I just had to try like every single thing because I couldn't get anything else there.
What about that situation?
Oh my gosh, you can feel the panic even when you talk about it, right? It's scarcity. So the what I live by is I think food is delicious. And if I'm going to eat something I love, I want to taste it. I want to take my time with it. I want to enjoy it. I want to savor it. Most overeating, if there was most overeating even isn't even really tasted. And
Mm.
I see that I ask people this over and over and over again, this binge I had to have because again, it was my reward, right? I'm celebrating. How much of it did you taste? How much of it did you enjoy? Well, no, I kind of felt guilty. So I was doing it in the pantry so my husband wouldn't find out, or I eat it in my car before I get home. So first of all, slow down. There's a ton of research that when you slow down, when you savor your food, you will eat less and you will feel more satisfied earlier. So just simply, the holidays are great. There's some holiday food I love. Make a decision to be conscious, because the other thing that happens is then the guilt comes in. Oh, I already ate this thing. I already blew it. So I might as well just keep blowing it. I'll just wait till January. And you end up inhaling all this stuff that you don't even really like because it's there, because you've decided you're on the overeating train now. Um, Eat what you love, and make sure you taste it, and give yourself permission to enjoy it, and also give yourself permission to be done, right? You don't have to eat it all because it's there. You get to decide how much really feels good inside your body. And a lot of people don't feel permission to do that, so then they feel guilty, so then they rebel and they just eat all of the things.
Okay, one more situation that I think is different that I wanted your take on is like boredom eating situation, where I see with a lot of my millennials who maybe used to like go out on a Friday and Saturday night, drink. They've given up drinking in that lifestyle now, which is great. But now their version of like a Friday night is just like kind of getting a bunch of junk food, and that's like the new pattern that they've built up. So what would you say about boredom eating in general, or even like a situation like that?
Okay, so what we have in all of these examples is a part of it is an automatic habit.
Mm-hmm.
So we have an automatic habit. It's a reaction. It's Friday night. This is what I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's after work. This is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of getting out of an automatic habit is, first of all, slowing it down, realizing you have an automatic habit. But if I tell you to not think about pink elephants, I absolutely know what you are thinking about. And
Mm-hmm.
if you come home on Friday night and say, I am not going to boredom eat, that is, your whole brain is going to be focused on sitting on your hands while you think about boredom eating and trying not to boredom eat. So it's really important. It doesn't sound sexy. It isn't as exciting as a cleanse that you can do and have dramatic results. And it is really important to think about, okay, what's the reason this is happening? What would I like it to look like? Or maybe I don't know what I want to do on Friday nights, but what do I know about what I want it to look like, right? I don't have a complete picture, but what do I know about what I want it to look like? What do I know about what I don't want it to look like? And what could I put in place to get myself a little bit moving in that direction? How do I not just repeat the same old patterns and the same old cues? And how could I do it differently? Which doesn't mean I'm going to set up a plan where I'm going to have perfect willpower and I'm going to be completely strong and I'm just going to drink wheatgrass juice or
Yeah.
something on Friday night, right? But what would I like it to look like? Or how could I feed myself some other things? If I'm bored, what would it look like to not be bored? I
Mm-hmm.
do think that one thing we don't our brains are really good at coming up with all these strategies. I should do this, and I should do this, and I should do this. And one thing that we don't always calculate is what our energy level is. And so I see a lot of high achievers that I work with who can come up with these power plans. But at the end of the day, the reason that they are slumping in their chair, watching TV and eating from the bag is because they're too tired to do their super plans, right? They don't have the energy. And so what does not being bored on a Friday night look like that is going to match the energy that you have on Friday night?
Mm-hmm.
Not what your superhuman version of you would do on Friday night. I think that's important to think about.
Yeah, no, I love that, Ella. That's a great answer.
Oh, there's so many things I could have said, but I was trying not to make this episode 2 hours long. So if somebody is super inspired today by everything you said, and they're like, wow, yeah, that's me. I think all my problems are from emotional eating. What is something that they could do today to start working on their emotional eating?
Well, the easy path, I believe, is come on over and take the free Hidden Hungers quiz.
Mhm.
That I designed that so that people don't get overwhelmed with all of this stuff and all of you've got enough to-dos in your head about food and about nutrition and about weight. And let's keep it really simple. So if you want to come take the quiz, you can come do that. That's at toomuchonherplate.com. And not only do you get your result, but you get here based on your result, these are some resources and here's some simple, doable steps that you can take. Do not let your brain tell you that they won't make a difference because that's what brains do.
Mhm.
Simple actually works a lot of the time. So that's a simple thing you could do. I would practice. Again, your brain's going to tell you this is too simple. Practice pausing.
Mhm.
Think about some of those times of day that are trouble times for you. And how could you, before that, take a breath and just ask yourself, what's going on inside of me right now? Your brain's going to say, that's ridiculous. I just need a food plan.
Mhm.
Try it. People are amazed. People are amazed when they try that. And don't be worried if you don't know the answer. Asking questions that you don't know the answer to is how you start to retrain your brain to focus on different things. And that's how you start to learn how to answer the questions.
Great, great. And then where can people work with you or reach you or listen to you? Anything else if they want to get connected to you, where would that be?
So I'm pretty easy to find. Toomuchonherplate.com, TOO, toomuchonherplate.com is my website. Too Much on Her Plate is my podcast
Mhm.
where I talk about all of this stuff. So the Too Much on Her Plate podcast, you can find that wherever you find podcasts. On Facebook and Instagram, it's also Too Much on Her Plate. And if you go to Too Much on Her Plate /map, I've created a roadmap which has some of how to get started with the podcast. Here are some episodes that are really helpful to listen to. You'll also get the link to the quiz so you can get started with that. It's kind of a get started guide. If what I'm talking about resonates with you, I would go to toomuchonherplate.com /map, and
Mhm.
that will plug you into all the other stuff.
Gotcha. Love it. Super easy. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Dr. Melissa McCreery. I hope you have a good one.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thank you so much for listening to the Millennial Nutritionist podcast. For daily weight loss tips and nutrition information, you can find us on Instagram at the.millennial.nutritionist and on TikTok at millennial.nutritionist. If you find this information helpful, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend who needs encouragement on their health journey. See you in the next episode.